Hey everyone, I'm Caryn Solomon, and welcome to What's IGN Crushing On, IGN Africa's official entertainment podcast. I'm your host, and I'm joined as always by my producer and editor Rebecca Barches. So this is a show where we discuss all things entertainment and pop culture with a new guest every week. We bring recommendations, news, and fun facts, sometimes touching on the more serious issues surrounding these topics.
All of them were smuggled. Some were used.
Hello.
Then killed.
How many trafficking convictions did you get last year?
You don't want to know.
We kidnapped them. But it wasn't for us. They're gone. Not just the 5 or 6 that you know of.
I want to take a look in these containers now.
More than 40.
Take a deep breath in, then hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We have a situation.
Someone in your operation was involved in some way or the other.
That was the trailer of I Am All Girls. It's currently available to watch on Netflix. Later on in the episode, we have an interview with actors Hlubi Mboya and Wessels and director Donovan Marsh from the film. But before we get started, we want to introduce you to a new team member that we have with us now. Welcome, Leanne Phillipson. Yay! Woo!
Hey!
Woohoo!
Try it again, but with more enthusiasm.
You guys might remember Leanne from episode 3 of the podcast. Actually, my first ever interview for the podcast. But episode 3, where we chatted about lots of things. Can't remember what. Sitcoms.
Mindy Kaling, I felt very typecast.
You're our first Indian guest. We had to give. You had to
No.
represent.
Pretty much.
But yeah, Leanne is helping us with lots of admin and PR and lots of other things. So it's a lot of fun for Rebecca and I, not just to have each other to talk to. So yeah, we have a stacked episode today, as always. Firstly, for our pop culture chat, we spoke to Lissete Lanuza, who I call Lizzie, all the way in Panama. And she's the editor-in-chief of international online magazine Fangirlish. They chat all things fangirl-ish and about fandoms and all the shows and movies and music and books that we love. So I chatted to Lizzie about Shadow and Bone, which is on everybody's mouths and like it's number 1 on Netflix across the world. We spoke about fandom culture and a lot more. So I met Lizzie a long time ago when I started out as a journalist writing, and she's always struck me as someone who's really passionate. So I thought this was a great conversation for us to have. So here's our chat with Lizzie. So how have you been? Like, how has this crazy year or so been for you?
It's been, well, like you said, it's been crazy. Like, I think I sort of got used to working from home very quickly. And then it all went weird really fast. Because even though we're used to working from home, we sort of all got used to working from home with the idea that we'd be out and back in, like, I don't know, 3 months. So we all sort of processed, yeah, I'm working from home. And then now I'm here, like, Like even right now, like I got a top and sweatpants, and this is like my new attire. It's like, how weird is it? Like I feel like the other day I cleaned my closet, and I there was no reason to clean my closet other than I thought it's been a year since I used high heels. What happened to the high heels I own? Am I ever gonna use them again? So it's been a weird year where you're trying to get used to some things and just I think sort of processing for all of us that some things are just not going back ever. So
And the COVID situation in your country, is it looking up?
it is looking up. It's looking up so much that you start to worry. Like when things are going well, you're like, this seems like a trick. Like this cannot be going as well as the government says it is. I mean, especially things are really bad in South America right now. Things are looking up in the US. So, but like everyone that's in the middle is like, are things really going well? Like, am I being punked? Is this real? But at least here, the vaccine rollout has been really good.
Okay.
My mom, my grandparents, everyone who's over 60 has already been vaccinated. They've started taking it down. Like, so I haven't gotten my shot yet, but my boyfriend who I live with did get his shot already, so I should be soon. So it feels like in that way we are moving forward. It's just maybe we are like there's a little bit of PTSD to it all. Like we're like don't believe that we really will be out of it.
I get that. No, I get that. It feels it feels like there's no end in sight. But that PTSD, I completely understand. So we met like online a long time
ages ago. Yes, ages. I don't even know. Like if you ask me the year, I'd say maybe five. Five at least.
Yeah, no, I think it was good 2014, 2015, somewhere around there, I feel like.
Yeah.
It's a long time ago. And you're the editor of Fangirlish.
Yes, I still I do a lot of freelance now too, because I mean the pandemic has sort of left us in a weird place where even if I wanted to go back to an office, like even if I could, I don't know if I will want to. And then we all sort of I think the pandemic also helped all of us understand that we sort of didn't want to work for like I was working for a very big company, like a very big law firm because I'm a lawyer by trade, and then I was doing this suits kind of thing where they expect you to work till 10 p.m., 10:30 p.m. and show up early the next day, and that was like sort of the norm, and I was a little caught in that dynamic, which was very toxic. I now realize because they expect everything from you, and then they want to call you at 10 a.m. on Saturday, and like your life isn't yours. And so I do have to thank the pandemic for being like, you know what, your life, living, doing things that you enjoy is more important than work. So now I'm just doing everything freelance, even any type of law work I'm doing. I'm doing freelance, I'm doing consulting, and I'm doing translating, and I'm doing writing. Um, and it's a little more up and down than a straight up lawyer salary, obviously, but I also have a life, and having a life is kind of fun.
I know that feeling. You know, for me too, I've been full freelance since the pandemic, and I didn't realize that this is what I was supposed to do until I had to do it. And now I'm like, I can't imagine going back to
an office or to dressing up or like I mean, I know this is probably the norm for women anywhere, but like I just realized how toxic relationships between older like bosses that are all men, because I worked in a situation where I work with a lot of older men who are my boss, and then it's I'm not even saying it was harassment, but it's just toxic in general what the expectations are placed on younger women. To just smile and be like, and I'm like, I am done with that.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think that's something that is universal. I feel like we've all dealt with that.
Yeah.
So tell me, like, how did you get into writing? Like, where did that spark come from?
I'm trying, like,
Mm.
I've always liked writing. Like, I took a creative writing class. Like, I was a type to take a bunch of creative writing classes, like coming out of high school and everything. But online, I think it was when you get into a show, you really get into a show,
Yeah.
and you want to have. I think that that's sort of like the intro for most of us, is like you really get into this, and then you go looking, and you feel like no one's saying the things that should be said. And you're
Mm.
like, but this is obvious the thing. Why are you not saying it? And I think for me, it was probably either Once Upon a Time or Arrow, or both, sort of like early seasons, where I was like, I just want to talk about this, and no one's talking about it in the way I wanted to be talked. And that there are more fandom spaces that are sort of respect fandom these
Mm.
days, but maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I felt like all the fandom spaces or all the online spaces didn't really respect fandom. It was
Yeah.
all about it. It was all meant to be very more professional, which I understand. Like, publications like EW are not doing the same thing that
Mm.
other fandom spaces, but it really did feel like fandom, which is in my experience is made up especially of women, wasn't getting like respect. Like
Yeah.
people were like, even in spaces that are thought of as being more male dominated, like the MCU, people think, oh,
Mm.
that's mostly men, and I find that's a lie. I mean, there are a lot of more men that watch the MCU than other properties, and more men online, but that doesn't mean there aren't women. And
Yeah.
like, even with the action figures and things like that. It's like, who do you think goes to the store to buy the toys, even if it's for a boy? The
Mm.
mom. So the lack of respect for the women in fandom spaces was one of those things that sort of like got me into be like writing, and like especially Arrow. I now remember it was all like, this has to be edgy and Oliver Queen and the edgy darkness, and I was like, I only care about the romance, dude. And if you said that, you were looked at as like less of a fan. But what I care for, what I care about, and what made Arrow
Mm.
last what it lasted, let me be honest, Olicity did. Not the
Mm.
dark part.
I think the first time we like really bonded online is when we both really hated Rumpelstiltskin in
Oh
Once Upon a
god,
Time.
yes! Yes!
We couldn't handle him anymore. And
I
that's
don't
and his romance with Bill, they
God.
just kept on
Yeah,
dragging
people
it.
kept there. People had he had his fans. Like, I still think you probably
Mm.
tweet about Rumpelstiltskin and some people will come defend him. I still don't know why. But yeah, we got into people came after us, didn't they? Because we were like,
Yeah.
we can't stand this toxic man. God, it's hilarious.
But that show also gave us Captain Swan, so like I can't like completely hate it ever.
Me too. I mean, it had bad part.
Yeah. Yeah, so talking about toxic men, like I wanted to talk to you about Shadow and Bone because this is now
Ooh.
just everywhere and everyone is talking about it. And I know you are extremely into it and you're writing all these amazing reviews on Fangirlish about it. You guys are doing the coverage. The coverage. I was like, you guys are writing like 3 pieces for every episode. It's wild. It is
We
wild.
put in a lot of work
So
into that one.
I was like, what? Because like every day there'll be like more and more content. I'm like, but no, but it's amazing. And I think that's something I miss with a lot of streaming shows is that, because it all comes out at once, we get one review that basically doesn't touch on, all the like subtle issues in each episode, which is great.
Yeah.
But my question was, what did you think of the show, basically?
I like the show. I like the show more than I expected to like it, because when the show was first announced, I made the executive decision to read the books.
Mm,
So when you read the books, you always come at a show from a different angle. You're always coming with expectations. And then I don't want to say I hated them, but I did not enjoy the Shadow and Bone books as much. So in fact, it took me a long time to read the Shadow and Bone books, and then when I got to Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, which are books 4 and 5, I was like, oh, so this is why people like the universe. Um, so when I heard that they were gonna bring the Six of Crows characters into Shadow and Bone, I was super excited, and then I was like, oh, but I actually do care about these characters. So now I'm more invested in them not ruining the characters I care about. I think they did have, in general, there are some issues with the way the show handled racism and a couple of tone deaf things, but I think in general, the show is a very, very good adaptation. That touched on some. It also has. I mean, doesn't it just touch on interesting plot points? Because in that regard, it's pretty much typical young adult. I just think it has very interesting characters. Like, not even like I know the thing is Ben Barnes and the Darkling, but he's not even that interesting a character. He is a stereotypical villain in young adult. Um, but Kaz and Inej and Jesper in particular, Nina, they are characters there that are not very typical of young adult.
Yeah.
And what they are and what the trauma they carry and then the ways they behave, and that I think that makes the show richer in general. So I think they did really well, and I think they did really well with casting. I think they did very good with the actors who were tasked. Like there are things I wish they would have done. They could have hired a disabled actor to play Cass. They didn't. They could have hired an actual plus size actress. Like I know Danielle is not typical for Hollywood standards, but that doesn't mean she's actually plus size. Um, those are Hollywood things that could always be better. Like I think in general, they did pretty well.
So I'm like, I think I'm on the third book now of Shadow and Bone, and I just thought that they made the three main characters so much more likable in the
Right.
series.
Right. Like
All three of
Mal.
them.
Mal. Like I had the chance to interview the actors before the show came out. And when Archie was in front of me, I was like, I know this has nothing to do with that question, but I just gotta tell you, I didn't like the character for 3 books. And then you became the character. And I remember somewhere in episode 1, I was like, is this me liking Mal? And then there's that episode with the letters. I think it's episode 4 where he's talking about Alina being his true north and whatever. And I was like, are these feelings for Mal? I'm feeling like I don't understand. How did I come to care for him? And I was really, really surprised. But even the Darkling, I think Ben Barnes is the kind of actor who can give a character like that nuance. Because in the books, he's just straight up mean, and I don't care. Like I don't know why. He's just evil. So I think Ben Barnes also gives the bad guy a level of nuance that was like, oh, you're now interesting. Wow. Yeah, and even Alina too. Like I don't know. I just didn't connect with her in the books like I do in the show.
But I think one of the great things about a show or the show is that it can tell us the different perspectives. Whereas in the book, we only seeing things from Alina's perspective, so we get to see things from Mal's perspective and the Darkling. So it kind of, makes it a bit more, as you said, nuance. But I wanted to touch on what you said about the racism, because I don't know about the, like, if the listeners know. I think that's like heavy fandom, like who are like super into the show know about this. But like they made a lot of comments about her being Shu.
Yeah.
But they never really explained what Shu, like where Shu is, or why people discriminate against Shu, and they just kind of made it like Asian-esque.
Yeah.
And use slurs that people in real life use for Asian people, and which wasn't cool.
Yeah, I think it was bad framing. I think it was a combination of probably good intentions. They did have an Asian writer who put a lot of her own experiences and the slurs she had been called into the show. I just don't think you can do that in a vacuum. So when you put the bad things and then you don't explain more, it comes off as like the thing in the universe is that the Ravka, the country we're seeing, which is coded vaguely as being Russia, is in war with Shuhan, which is a country right next to it. I think they should have just explained it more, because in the books, I always got the feeling it was more a thing of we're at war. Not, and they could have coded it as more as a war thing than a race thing. They should have been like, oh, we hate people who look like this because these are our enemies, instead of we hate them because it's a race issue. And I think that would have been an easier way for people to understand, and an easier way to sell the message. But they probably wanted to add some of what the writer had experienced, and then I think they missed the mark completely in how they handled, especially because the Shuhan storyline in the books doesn't come back till book 7. So if this was set up for what, season 5, possibly, it was very, very badly done. For and you cannot expect people to just have 7 or 9 books of what backstory to understand what you might be trying to do. Like, even me with all the books of backstory, I was like, maybe what they're trying to do is, so I'm not even sure. But I can see sort of um an attempt, but I think they handled this wrong, because if you're gonna bring all of that into it, you gotta, they would have been better off explain as a war thing. uh and if not, they just had to spend more time explaining the different, like, because there's also a mention, there's not even just that, there's a mention of Soya calling Alina a half breed, and I think it's episode 3. And then there's mention of the shoe, but there's also mention of the Suli, which Ineji Suli, and they just didn't spend enough time explaining that for us to get a context of, oh, these are the rules of the show, and this is how the show is gonna handle it in the future. So I think that was a mistake.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, because you guys deal in fandoms, you deal with a lot of the hectic sides of fandom. So what is like some of the wildest like interactions you've had to with members of fandoms?
Ooh, well, like, I mean, in general, like, there are some wild stories about fandom in general. But now that we were talking to Sharon Bone a couple of days ago, Aaron tweeted, we did a Fangirlish, we did 3 articles per episode of Sharon Bone, and we thought it would be fun to do sort of that comparison between the point of view of how the show is perceived from someone who read the books versus someone who didn't. So she was doing the perspective of someone who hadn't, and then there's this obvious moment in the show where there's a revelation that Ben Barnes' character is the bad guy, which, again, I never, like, he was dressed in all black and he was Ben Barnes. Like, I don't know who he was fooling. But apparently he was fooling Aaron, because she got to a point where episode 5, and she was super angry, as I assume you would be if he was fooling you and you were falling for his trap. So she made a tweet about I don't even remember what the tweet was about, but the Darling fans got super upset, and then they were like, "Why are you policing what we like?" And I was like, "But no one's policing what you like. We just, like, literally wrote a review with our opinion." And fandom is super funny in this regard, because they're like, "Don't police what you like," as they police what you say. Because it is hilarious that people are like, again, like, I have never understood, because I mean, I do understand that this happens a lot, but I have never understood the need to go fight with someone who disagrees with you.
Yeah.
Just move along. Like, this has happened to me recently in the weirdest fandom possible, in the Soy's Playlist fandom. Like, I do not understand. But, like, this is hilarious, because I mean, Soy's Playlist is a show that I got into because of the grief aspect of it. I lost my dad a few years ago, and then the show was dealing with that, and it hit me emotionally. But the show has a ship, has a love triangle, whatever. And so I've been very hard on the love triangle, because I think it's just dumb, badly written lately. So I had to pick one guy, and then she changed to the other one, and then I wrote a review. I was criticizing mostly the writing. And then the fans of this other ship decided that since I hated the other ship, I needed to be reminded of the other ship. And I've been getting, someone has taken the time to send me an email every day the past 3 weeks with a gif of Zoe and Simon kissing. as if that somehow triggered me. Which I mean, go you, because I actually admire someone having that much free time. Like, I know we're in a pandemic, but I hope that this person like gets up in the morning and gets some coffee before like putting like I hope you schedule the tweet or something or the email or something. You don't take the time to sit down and write me a different email every day. But fandom can sometimes be weird like that. Like we don't agree on everything, and we're never gonna agree on everything. Fandom
Mhm.
doesn't really understand that personal opinions about that are not the same as yours are not actually a personal attack on you. We just
Yeah.
disagree on stuff. So that's always been the funniest thing about fandom.
I actually did not realize that Zoe's extraordinary playlist had such hectic fans until I saw the attacks on your tweets. I was like, I would never expect this okay, it's not comedy, but I mean this this
Light show.
light-ish kind, it's not, you usually get that with the more like drama supernaturally shows. You get like the hectic fandoms. I was like, I've never seen this, and it was crazy fun.
It's actually kind of funny. Like it gets to be to a point where it's kind of funny because you're like, okay. I mean, they already. I mean, I know a lot of people get actual like doxing and head dead threads, and like we've gotten at Fangirlish like really bad like dead threads. Um, back in the Supergirl fandom days, that's been bad. But lately with Zoe's playlist, it's just been funny. Like the it's just kind of hilarious that you take the time to do this every day, and then there's this person, and I don't follow them, and then just but other people will be like, this person is talking about you, and then they'll send me the tweets, and then they, when they talk about you, but they put like an asterisk or an
Yeah.
ad. So it's like, okay, but like if you're so desperate to talk about me, like you can even add me. And then someone just like tweeted at me, and it was like, block me so I don't have to see your opinions. And I was like, me block you? Like you can just block me. Like please go ahead. Like why would I do you the favor of blocking you? You're not bothering me. I don't get people.
Oh my gosh, it's so fun. I actually miss being like that passionate about something that I would like email somebody one day. I mean, every day, or like,
Like, and then this person has to be making the gifts because they're really good gifts they're sending me every day. Like,
okay.
thank you for the work you've been like. I mean, I hadn't thought of it, but I could probably figure out who it is if I take the gifts and go onto
Mm,
like Tumblr.
Tumblr.
Because I mean, they're not doing those gifts just for me. I'm pretty sure they probably posting them on Tumblr or something. So, but I just don't want to know. I just want to continue just laughing every time I see the. I actually felt like the last episode was very heavily towards the other couple, and then one of my friends was like, "Why don't you just email them back with a gift from the other couple?" So I was like, almost did it, but then I was like, yeah, I don't want to make this worse than it is.
Um. So, what would you consider to be your like favorite ship ever?
Whoever you want me to pick one?
Yeah, ever.
God. But like, I mean, I think this question is very heavily slanted towards what you are obsessing on at the moment.
Mhm.
Um, because I mean, if it comes to history, I might say like Mulder and Scully, but that disappointed me badly. In the last few years, so I've sort of moved on, but there's
Mm.
still a lot of memories from like 14, 15-year-old me writing fic for the first time, tied into Mulder and Scully. But like right now, my favorite ship is Cass and Inej from Chad on Bone from the books. Like I went into the books, like I mean they are in the show and they're very good. I think the actors are very good, but the dynamics in the show haven't even really touched what they are in the books. And one benefit of the books that you haven't gotten to Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom is that they are not from one point of view. They switch point
Mm.
of views
Oh,
between the
that's
six
good.
main characters. So you kind of get all of them. So when you're getting the ship, you're getting both of their point of views on how they feel about each other, and that I think helps you really connect to the characters. And the story they're telling, but it's also a story of really two very, very people carrying heavy trauma. I one of my favorite ships, now that you ask all the time, is Rogue and Gambit. And I grew up also on those comics, and then that was one of my favorite tropes, like two people who couldn't touch and somehow had to find a way to um sort of show their feelings. And that's sort of the same trope that they sort of play on with Cass and Inesh. So right now I'm like, I have the proof number one that they're like my number one ship right now is that I have the tab open on AO3, the fix, and every morning I refresh it to see if there's something new. So that's where I am right
Yeah, I
now.
know. That's your favorite. I know that. I know that sign. It's your favorite.
That's the number one sign.
So like, what is coming up? What's coming up? Like, what TV shows or films are coming up that you are kind of interested in or you excited for?
I mean, Lucifer is coming up at the end of, well, Lucifer, the second part of season 5 is coming up at the end of May. And I really like Lucifer. Lucifer was a show that was kind of like, oh, I like it in a casual procedural way. And then I think when the show moved to Netflix, the show went from casually good to really, really good. I think Netflix really put a lot into it. So Lucifer is coming up at the end of the month, and it's Lucifer, Lucifer, Lucifer. I'm also really excited about In the Heights and West Side Story. I know people are not, but like we're getting a West Side Story with actual Latinos. Let me have it. If it turns out to be bad, fine. But like, let me be excited for Rita Moreno and Rachel. Like I'm not even gonna mention the white dude because he doesn't matter. But like, I'm excited for that. And In the Heights is coming soon. And movie wise, that's what I'm more excited for. I would like to be excited for Black Widow. But I think that ship sailed like 3 or 4 years ago. I am excited for the Eternals and Shang-Chi, like the other Marvel properties. Um, and I'm super excited for Loki. Like I sort of lost a lot of my love for the MCU in Avengers Endgame. I did not like that ending. So that sort of ruined the MCU for a bit. And then WandaVision came back and I was in the middle of it. And I was like, fine, I guess I do like this again.
I was the same with Loki. I was like, sort of interested in it. And then I saw the trailer and I was like, okay, I'm 100% in.
I mean, Tom Hiddleston is really like the type of performer that, because Loki is not a character you're ever supposed to really like, and then he is Loki. He becomes Loki, and you're like, fine, Tom, whatever you want.
That's like the perfect explanation of how the character has such longevity, though. Like, I can't deal with it. Every time I rewatch the movies, I'm like, the fact that this character is still around is wild to me.
Right. I also think part of the reason is that the ship in Thor never worked. Like no one cares about Jane. Like hopefully we will care about her in Thor Love and Thunder, but we never did. So the only relationship Thor had that worked was his brother Loki. So that was the thing we sort of held on to in the way maybe we held on to a ship with Tony, like Tony and Pepper, but with Thor it was like, oh yeah, there's a girl, but who cares? There's Loki.
That's so true. Okay, so this is the question we ask everybody, but who was your first celebrity crush?
My first celebrity crush was probably David Duchovny. I had a very serious X-Files phase in the 90s. I was like, I now, you know, when you think back on fandom and you're like, why were my parents letting me watch this at the age I was? And I've asked my mom that because I was watching the X-Files live when I was like, what, 10, 11? Like, what was I doing? That was a scary show that now, as an adult, I don't watch scary movies, probably because those X-Files traumas from my childhood. But yeah, the Fox Mulder in the 90s, David Duchovny, and then probably another David Boreanaz, as Angel in Buffy. Those were the two like first ones I remember, like posters on the wall and everything, kind of thing. When I was like, yeah, both of them, very very. But Duchovny first, David Duchovny. It's like, yeah. I mean, now as an adult, I have more of a crush on Gillian Anderson, but 12-year-old me was, it's like, I think we've all evolved from David Duchovny to Gillian Anderson, but as a 12-year-old, it was all David.
Hey, Lizzie, thank you so much for chatting with me. This was lovely. I know I went a bit over time, but this was lovely.
It was a pleasure.
And it was so nice to meet you. I mean, honestly.
Meet you after meeting you a long time ago, yes.
That was our chat with Lizzie. You can find her at LizzieThat on Twitter and at LizzieThat21 on Instagram. Our next interview is with the actors of I Am All Girls, Hlubi Mboya and Erica Wessels, and director Donovan Marsh. I Am All Girls is about a relentless detective who finds common ground with a killer systematically targeting the perpetrators running a powerful child trafficking ring. This film was excellent and it's really harrowing. I was shook after watching it, and I'm sure you will be too. So here's our chat with them. So I'm from What's IGN Crashing On. It's an entertainment podcast. And it's a pleasure to chat to all of you. I really love the film. Like, I'm not even just saying that. I really, really loved it. And thank you so much for making it. So actually, Donovan, let's start with you. Can you tell our listeners what I Am All Girls is about?
I Am All Girls is a story of two very strong and powerful police women who work in the Hawks trafficking unit. And their job is to bring sex trafficking syndicates down and put the perpetrators in jail. And it tells the story of one of those cops. It tells the full story of her life. And she actually began her life as a sex trafficking victim. And we base that in reality. In the Des van Rooyen, Van Rooyen, abducted 6 girls back in the 90s. It's based on that true story. And we're imagining one of our characters as one of those girls who escapes and then grows up and then comes back to take her revenge as a policewoman. So it's a thriller, it's a police procedural thriller, and it follows this vigilante, this lady, as she tries to bring down the entire syndicate, not just the person who trafficked her, but the entire syndicate, which actually expands across countries. She tries to bring that syndicate to book with her fellow policewoman, and the fellow policewoman doesn't know who she is.
Okay. So, Hlubi, what attracted you to this role?
I've worked with our director before, and I love his vibes, and I like his vision, and I like how he works with actors. So that was a definite drawing card. On a creative level, Ntombi is a character that I've never played before, so that always excites me. I think it keeps me on my toes and keeps me spontaneous and keeps me refreshed, which I love. And, the subject matter of human trafficking, I didn't know much about it. And I am so glad that I took that leap of faith, because now I can call myself a human trafficking advocate. It's amazing that after I shooted this film, I've kind of attracted people in my life who are in the line of rescuing or restoring survivors and victims. And it's a good place to be. It feels good. And it's the right thing to do. And also being able to work on a film that was on such a grand scale. I mean, they put a lot of money into it, as you can see. And working with my colleagues. Yes, you see, it's a small group of us in South Africa, but we haven't worked with everybody. So it's also nice and refreshing to see your peers that you've enjoyed their work from a distance, and now you're working on the same projects. It felt good. It felt really, really good.
And you, Erica, what attracted you to this role?
Yeah, I know for a fact that I wanted to work with Donovan. I've been following his work, and so that was a big draw card for me. I didn't know who he was going to cast, so only once I knew who my cast was and I started working with him, I was just like bowled over by the talent in Joburg. But I think you know, let's be honest, in this in this country, we don't always have the luxury of hand picking. So in a sense, it's an act of huge grace and beauty that this role kind of came to me. You know, I can't cherry pick. Sometimes we just need to work as actors. So I was really lucky that it's about meaningful. It's a meaningful theme. It's about a real social dilemma, and hopefully the film will have real impact. You know. But collaborating on set, you know, once we started shooting, I was like, oh, this is just fantastic, because it's so rare that you work with incredible talent with no egos, and that's like across the bar, every single person. So great friendships were forged, and I loved every moment of it.
So Donovan, can you tell us sort of like, why do you think I'm All Girls was an important film to make right now?
That's a loaded question. Yeah, I don't know if there's any time in which it isn't important to make this kind of film. You know, I guess it's a difficult film to make at any point, and that's how I'm going to enter your question. Just to say, this is tough subject matter that most films can't tackle, just because we worry about how the audiences are going to respond. I mean, how do we take this subject matter and make it palatable to an audience without sort of underplaying it, or worse, exploiting it? And so that was the real challenge. And so that's what attracted me to it and wanted me to make it at this point. And then, you know, when you say now is the moment when the script came around and suddenly money was available for it. And it was up to me whether I wanted to take it on or pass the challenge on to somebody else. And it was a challenge that I relished. And I wanted to make something a bit artier, a bit darker, a bit more interesting, and see if I could, you know, pull off the challenge of taking this impossible subject and making it thrilling and exciting and moving to watch, while also being respectful towards it and raising some awareness. And there's a lot of boxes to tick. The movies work best when they just try and tick one box. And so, you know, you often have mixed results when you take that on. And this movie, I mean, I think for some people it's too difficult to watch. And for some people, it's not fast-paced and exciting enough to watch, not genre enough to watch. And so, you know, it's a big challenge to do. But at the end of the day, because it's an important issue, because these things need to be spoken about and people need to know the extent of the problem. I think we all know it happens. If we don't know, this is the second biggest problem in terms of crime in the world, just after drugs, and tremendously lucrative, and it's only growing, and it's modern-day slavery. We thought we were done with that. And so I was excited that we had an opportunity to bring that and put that out there. You know, what happens next, who knows? But I'm glad it was made. I'm glad it was made now, and I'm glad we made it.
Okay. Hlubi, what kind of research do you do for the role?
The production was generous enough to give us a lot of research, specifically for the different characters, which is a privilege, because some of the times, most sets, you know, you have to do it yourself. So I didn't start from a position of zero, but I specifically chose to reflect and to live the character of an example that the production gave us. And you should Google her. Her name is Griselda Grootboom. And what I really loved about it is that she was actually reachable. Like, I actually met her and I phoned her and I read her book. She wasn't somebody from there, you know, maybe the US or, you know, Ghana, you know, she's a South African girl from Khayelitsha, from Cape Town. So I knew her points of reference, because I'm from Cape Town, I'm from Khayelitsha. So I knew very much a story, you know, Grootboom, jy weet. And she's a survivor. I mean, she's an advocacy for women. She does a lot of work for the UN. She's written a book. So she was a really real person for me. And as I've said in most of, you know, these interviews, that, you know, my first point of satisfaction and fulfillment from this film is when she sees, because she's very much aware that she was my complete and only reference for Ntombi Zonke. And I hope when she sees it and she watches my work, it'll settle her soul and it'll settle her spirit, and know that her life has never been wasted and never was a waste. And then for me, I got the Oscar. I'm cool with that. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at with where I want my role to be taken to, and what the reference actually means to me. A living legend. That's what she is.
Oh. So, Erica, so what did you find most challenging about playing the role of Jodie?
I think honestly, the trickiest thing for me was to be an authentic, to feel as much as I could like an authentic policewoman, and but I think that handling a gun and sort of fitting into that world to a certain degree. But I think more than anything, I needed to really tightrope my way and navigate my way through the scenes, because the way Jodie was written was definitely someone that was suffering from post-traumatic stress. Like, she was a highly emotional, a very, very intense character. It was written like, all the way through, just the way she responds. And, in the initial script, I think there was like 12 times that she like bursts out in tears. And at some point it was a conversation that I had with Donovan, and I just said to him, I mean, I can't, this is crazy. Like, I can't let this woman sob so many times. Like, she's just going to be hysterical. So we kind of tweaked and we kind of decided, when to pull back and when to. But so for me, the challenge was like, she should be intense, and she is hectic. She's like a pit bull that doesn't let go. This is her very life. This is her being. This is her oxygen. She doesn't have a normal life. This is her focus and her legacy. So how do you tell that story and not make her completely, over the top? So that and I think in some cases I succeeded, and maybe in others not so much. But I really needed to, I needed people to understand that she was someone that carried the weight of this issue. And she wasn't just a cop. She was carrying the very load of the difficulty and the complexity of this issue. And it is her very life. She takes it extremely serious, and she doesn't have a life beyond it, So I think that was definitely quite an interesting thing for me to navigate.
I think it was so cool, like when you went to her home and you could see like just the stacks, the boxes of like case files, and like if you didn't see a kitchen there's no way to differentiate between the fact that it was a home or if it was an office. Like, it is very obvious that is probably how her mind worked. Her mind was just centered around the work.
Totally. And I also, that's how I see her. I was saying to another interviewer as well, like, in my head, she had never been in a relationship. She was never going to get married. She was never going to have her own kids. She was never going to go on holiday to Hermanas. She doesn't do that. That's not her life. Her world and her very livelihood is this world. And that's why, why I like her so much for it, her tenacity.
Donovan, can you talk to the music in the film, like the choices you made behind that? Because I thought it was so eerie and interesting how like we go between like the score and like the singing in between.
Look, I'm not a big fan of music in films or overpowering orchestral scores. I think they've got their place, but I prefer dystonal music that adds a layer to the drama. It doesn't just repeat what you're looking at, but actually brings another texture to what you're experiencing. And my idea with my amazing composer, Brendan Jury, I mean, nobody realizes that they're composing music for a film. It's 4 albums worth of music. It's 90 minutes worth of music. And the film wasn't wall-to-wall music, but, there was at least 70 minutes of music had to be composed. It's no small thing done by one person, obviously, with artists to play the instruments. But our idea was to find a young girl, not necessarily a singer, and just do a very haunting refrain. And what she's singing is about love, but do it in a very haunting way. And just have a very young girl singing, not necessarily in a beautiful voice, but in a very honest voice, and use that to evoke the idea of a lost childhood. And so we use it a number of times in the film to create that feeling, because that's what it evokes. I find that song tremendously emotional. And we just put it there. It's the lyrics are in vernacular.
Yeah, in vernacular, I remember, yes.
But it's something about I love you, I miss you. Or it's not a lot of lyrics, but it's something like that. And, I use it when the young girl's being trafficked into the city, when she's trapped inside the bucky. I use it when Jodie first encounters a young girl in the brothel and they have a moment on the bed together, and a couple of other places. And then that against a very atmospheric kind of African score. And there was also some dangerous sounds in there. So we had Israel Mokwe is an amazing rap artist come in and just create some big, deep, guttural male grunts. And we sort of weave that into the music. And so those big scenes in the docks has those big, angry, powerful grunts, which for me sort of capture symbolically the underbelly of human trafficking, which is almost exclusively done by males. So yeah, I had tremendous, I don't want to say fun, but I love composing music for the film. And I had a tremendous editor, a guy called Lucian Barnard, and a tremendous ear. And he found, so when we're editing, we don't have the composed music yet, though I had actually composed some of those songs before we got to edit. And we layer them in. He found some incredible music from films, and that we layered in and then used that to reference and then compose our Africanized version of that. And I wanted a modern African score. I didn't want, maybe what you'd heard before, but sort of do a quasi African modern score using weird tin cans and strange instruments, not the conventional instruments. And so a lot of thought and experimentation was put into that soundtrack. And Brendan Jerry, the composer, is just unbelievable. He's knocked it out the park. I love working with him.
Thank you. Hlubi, so the role of Ntombi is very quiet. So was it like difficult to portray the character's emotions through mostly body language and facial expressions?
Yes, it was. But I found it, and it's been said that it's been more effective than a whole lot of chunky dialogue. And I found that it also grew me as an actress, knowing that the nonverbal can actually have such powerful nuances, and playing those beats. I think it just was also a lesson in life, of solitude, and so much can be said when nothing is spoken, and where truth honestly lies. The body never lies, you know what I mean? And I find that, especially when it comes to trauma as well, it's not just in our mind, we hold that in our body. And I try to really showcase that in Ntombi. I think going forward that if I find a script is too wordy, I will definitely make a suggestion to the next director that I work with on cutting down on unnecessary script. Because I think as actors, we want that, that moment, our moment where we get to speak and be, in the frame and have that presence. But it's actually not about that. It's about so much more being said when nothing is said. And that's what I learned from this film.
So, Erica, the character of Jodie is very much guided by empathy. So do you think this is what makes the character unique to others that we've seen before?
To others, meaning of my work or of just other police cops?
Yeah, mainly like police cops.
Yeah. I mean, I don't actually watch a lot of police dramas, to be honest with you. It's not my genre that I like. I don't think I've ever watched, that's not true, but I think, I don't know if she's different. I mean, I hope that she's authentic and that her passion comes through, and her, just her bullheadedness to let go, and her absolute obsession, and empathy is definitely what drives her. Empathy and sheer madness, to a certain degree. And I could really relate to that, this whole thing, like sex trafficking, what happens to our children and to women. It gets my blood boiling to a point which I actually need to restrain myself a little bit. So I could really, it was quite cathartic and in a sense quite therapeutic, for me, and I'm sure for Hlubi in a sense also, like, portraying the role of a vigilante and just going rogue and, taking, and we're not by any means suggesting that that's the right way to deal with it. But there is something in our inner man as humans that go, the awfulness and the terribleness of sex trafficking and slavery and human trafficking is so grotesque. It is so, it's like the darkest part of evil for me. And it just makes my skin crawl. And I just, So it was really cool to kind of lean into that and not have to hide that because I'm a cop and, you know, I'm cool, you know, I got it, you know. She really was someone that just took off that mask and then also, I mean, there was definitely times in front of her peers where she hid, you know, you could see that she was trying to hold it all in, but, you know, it was, yeah, it was showing.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. Like, this was lovely. I can't wait for everybody to see the film. And thanks so much for chatting to us.
Thank you.
Caryn. Thank you so much.
So that was our interview with Hlubi Mboya, Erica Wessels, and Donovan Marsh. I Am All Girls is now available to watch on Netflix. So, guys, I was saying to you earlier that I'm very excited. This is my second Isidingo guest on the show. As I've mentioned on the podcast many times, I was an Isidingo stan. So for me, like, Nandipa having been on the podcast is wild.
You got Frank Xavier and Nandipa. Now you just need a Lolly or a Len, and you complete the collection.
In here, that young squad, even Ma Agnes, that would also be good. I feel like this is like the Australians, whenever they get someone that was on Neighbours or Home and Away, like Margot Robbie or any of the Chris Hemsworth, any of those actors, they always have like this pride because that was like their home soap. So like that's I think what I feel about Isidingo. Like, I watch all the soaps, but Isidingo was my number one. Okay, so let's get into crashing on this week. So Leanne, what have you been crashing on this week as our guest?
Ooh, so we just finished Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist on Showmax, which was insanely good, but also very intense. We did have to take breaks in between because it deals with some heavy subject matter in between the ridiculous off-the-wall musical numbers and comedy. There are a lot of gut punches, but it was so good. Obviously finished Shadow and Bone, which was amazing. And now I'm thinking I have to go read the books because I know so little about that whole universe. And then I'm currently reading a book of short stories by Tom Hanks called Uncommon Type, which is surprisingly like fantastic. I say surprisingly because like it's Tom Hanks, and so like obviously great actor, but not really sure how his writing would be. But like I've started reading it, and both times I ended up going to bed way later than I should have, just because I had to finish the story, because it's short story. Like I had to finish it, and so yeah, that's currently what I'm crashing on.
And you, Rebecca?
I needed some cheering up this week, so I watched comedians in cars getting coffee. I put it in the background, and it made me realize that I don't like Jerry Seinfeld that much.
Oh my gosh, I also realized that recently. But okay, wait, you say your thing first.
No, but we can go into this. Like, he kept saying sexist and racist, like subtly racist things, and I get it, he's a comedian, but there's still this line of like, you are not joking, motherfucker. I mean, you are not joking, sir. No, you are not joking, Jerry Seinfeld. That is all you. That is your opinion. Don't hide it under comedy. But anyway, that led me to watching Hassan Minhaj, his stand-up special, which was so good. And then it led me to watching Aziz Ansari. And then I found out that Aziz Ansari, there was like a whole scandal with him. And so I'm just catching up with all the comedy and the comedians and all the drama there. And apart from that, I actually started watching the first scene of I'm All Girls. And I'm super excited to watch the full movie because it looked really well produced.
I just want to say about Jerry Seinfeld. So I also really love Seinfeld and stuff. And then I listened to an interview he did with Mark Madden. You know, I love Mark Madden's podcast. But it was quite in depth. But he was so not self-aware. And he was just so negative. Like, he kept pushing back. There's actually, I think it's like it was an edited out part of the way Lee's podcast spoke about this. But like I feel like he's not a comedian for the current times. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I also think because he had the bit of of being a young white man from Massapequa, apparently, now I know this. But, you know, I feel like it was easier back then as someone like Jerry, as you're saying, to become famous with the jokes that he had. But now, if he had told the same jokes in today's times, like you just said now, it would not go down well at all. Like, he's not that funny. Like, his show is funny because Julia Louis-Dreyfus is a good actress and, you know, a good combination of people. But
I don't know. I think
So it's more the ensemble cast and the way it's all put together than actually being funny.
I do think he can write. He's a good comedy writer, but I think because he's not like aware of himself, his comedy doesn't have a depth to it that others have, and which we've been looking for in comedy now. I do think he's a good joke writer. I think that because he's so structured, things work well, and you can tell his stories can have 3 acts that can have the good punchline at the end. So I do, and I do think Seinfeld was a very well written show. But like, I just don't think he's moved with the times. So
yeah, maybe not that episode where they're in the Chinese restaurant. That's not a well-written episode.
I know,
but most things if you watch from the 90s haven't aged well. Like any sitcom from the 90s, whether it's like, it's so rare to find one that holds up and still stays good or relevant, or
even if you watch some of like Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt now, it's especially with the way a lot of the Asian jokes, Tina Fey and the way she writes Asian people is a problem.
Ooh, problematic.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times he discussed the line between comedy and like where the line is before you become too politically correct and you kind of what's it called, censor people, you know. And so I don't know, I feel like he was sort of to an extent he was self-aware, but for the most part he said things that did not sit well with me. Anyway.
Yeah, he's a weird one. Okay, so what I've been crashing on. So this week, you know, I've watched a lot of stuff that it's become like fragmented. But to be honest with you, the only thing I've really been crashing on this week is Ben Barnes, like which is weird because I've been crashing on Ben Barnes for the last probably 10 years of my life. But the thing is that because this amazing invention of TikTok, I have just spent hours just watching fan cam after video after clip of Ben Barnes, and then going back and watching parts of The Punisher, which I love so much. And obviously I read Shadow and Bone. I'm on the 3rd book at the moment, and I'm loving it. And the series, obviously, that ignited. But now all these children are out here talking on TikTok about like
youths,
like, oh, Ben Barnes, this older man. Guys, Ben Barnes is like 8 years older than me. He don't feel so old.
Yeah, he's the same age as my husband. I was like, everyone needs to calm down.
This one girl did a thing. I'm showing my dad picture of my crush. It's the same age as him. I'm like, the same age? Your dad? How would dads, people with that age, having children that's old enough to have phones?
Listen, let's say there was someone who was not sure who Ben Barnes was. Like, it's not me, but let's say there was someone
hypothetically speaking.
Yeah, hypothetically speaking, for a friend, who is Ben Barnes?
Have you
Prince
watched
Caspian from Narnia?
Okay. The goat? The goat guy?
No, that's James McAvoy. Oh, Rebecca, I'm going to send you a funny TikTok. The goat
the
guy.
Anne's face.
Mr. Tumnus.
The goat guy.
Yeah, the guy. I just think whenever I think of Narnia, I think of the man who was off a goat.
I'm gonna send you a funny TikTok about that, Rebecca. But
okay.
No, he's in a lot of genre stuff. So he's in like a lot of either very period pieces like Dorian Gray and that kind of stuff, or he's in like very fantasy things like Narnia. He was in obviously like Shadow and Bone. He was in Marvel's The Punisher. He's in a lot of like smaller stuff, I'd say.
Okay.
But he's very cute. Whew. Oh my word.
Yeah, I remember Googling him and it was very difficult to find pictures of him when he's not in a period costume. Like, because I feel like he's always in like that suit, that like dark leather coat, cape situation, like all of the pictures.
Mm.
And then he has like fabulous hair.
Yeah.
Does the things. It's very Shah Rukh Khan hair. It's fantastic.
I actually think he looks nicer now than he did when he was younger. But I also tend to think that everybody looks nicer older. But
I feel like because in Shadow and Bone, they did a thing with his eyes. Like, did they give him the bags in Shadow and Bone? Or
I
like,
don't know.
is that just his face now?
I don't know. But either way, I don't care. Bags and all. I'll be a bellboy for that. I don't care. I'll carry those bags.
I love that I can see Rebecca has Googled him.
I'm
and is
Googling
genuinely
away.
feeling it.
And I'm thinking he is in the UK at the moment.
Rebecca,
Yeah.
It's like a
Rebecca,
quick
you-
swim away.
Rebecca, I know how to shoot.
Oh, okay, I got you. Yeah, but I mean, like, I'd be like, have you met my wonderful friend?
Friend Caryn. She would love
No,
to
I don't
interview
trust
you.
you.
He's
I
like,
don't trust you. No, I don't trust anybody. I don't trust anybody.
Good to know.
There's only one thing.
Okay, fine.
I don't trust anybody. No ways. Leave my man out of this.
So I'm not allowed to go.
No,
over
you
to
don't even
the
to
UK,
look at
find
him.
Ben Barnes.
You're not even allowed to look at him.
I can't even Google.
No, put that,
no Google.
Close that tab. Close that tab.
Which only one? How many tabs?
Stop making eyes.
Close all of them, all the tabs. Okay. Anyway,
Oh.
this was fun. Thank you, guys. Don't forget to follow What's Crashing on YouTube and sign up for our Discord group in the show notes and all the other things. Anybody else want to plug something? But thank you guys so much. This was lovely. See you in 2 weeks' time.
The podcast can be found at Crushing on Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find more information about this and all our other episodes at our website, crushingonpodcast.com, and send any feedback to crushingonpod@gmail.com. Join our Facebook group, Crushing on Club, where we chat about the show, celebrity news, recommendations, the whole shebang. Let us know what you think about what was discussed in this week's episode by sending us a voice note or email to crushingonpod@gmail.com. The show is produced by me, Caryn, and Rebecca Barches. The show is edited and engineered by Rebecca Barches. Our logo was designed by Latifa Maroof. And the show was created in partnership with IGN Africa. If you like the show, tell everyone that you can any way that you can. Keep up to date with all our episodes by subscribing to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please rate and review the episodes on Apple Podcasts, as it helps others find the show. We'll be back next week with another in-depth conversation with a pop culture lover. See you then!